we drove from the MTC over to Leeds, and it's not very long. It was maybe like an hour and a half. So we all got on the coach and drove over, and I remember I was sitting next to my MTC companion because we were going to the same mission, and we were both just so nervous and exhausted and everything that we both just fell asleep. And when we got there, we went into the chapel, and we had a meeting, and the assistants were there and some of the office couples, and then we had a chance to have an interview with President Pilkington. And those were the really early days, and I wasn't quite as close with President then as I am now, but I remember feeling a lot of fear. I mean, the unique thing about a mission is it takes you out of your comfort zone, like, so often. And the first day and the first week is a lot of that. And so I just remember kind of feeling like, I don't really know what I'm doing here, like, what's going to happen next. And it was just a lot of anticipation and kind of just scary. And but we went, and the Pilkingtons had us for a little lunch at their house. And then we went back, and that was the point where we were going to meet our trainer. And it's funny how those first meetings go, because when new missionaries are coming in and they announce who your trainer is and everything, it kind of turns into a sports event. Like, the trainer runs up and hugs you, and everyone is cheering and clapping, and it feels like this big moment, and it is, but it's just funny. There's a lot of enthusiasm at those meetings, I think, to kind of help you have that out into your first week. So what happened with me, I remember there were 6 of us again, 6 sisters, and then probably about 10 elders maybe in my group, and we were all sitting at the top on the stand looking out, and there were missionaries seated there, and so we were trying to figure out if our trainer was in the room or what, and then finally came the time where they announced everything, and so I was still sitting. I was sitting in the chair at the front, and President Pilkington, Sister Pilkington read out that I would be serving in Hull, and I would be having a Chinese-speaking companion. And so at that point, and there were 2 other girls or sisters in my group that got the same calling, not in the same area, but Chinese speaking as well. And so that was a big surprise, because you don't expect that going to England. You don't expect to be dealing with Chinese. But because there are so many university areas in the Leeds Mission, and really in all of England, there's a lot of Chinese that come over, and they're really, really believing people. And there's a need for a Chinese speaker. There's a huge need. And so my trainer was from Hong Kong, and she speaks Cantonese, Mandarin, Korean, and English. So that was kind of intimidating, but we got on really well. The first day and first week, it was hard because I didn't speak Chinese. I wasn't called to speak Chinese. I picked up very, very little. And so the first week we were just trying to work out how I would contribute to lessons and how I would connect with the people. And I remember just feeling like there was this huge barrier between me and the people, because I couldn't talk to them really. And some of them spoke a little bit of English, but we mostly taught in Chinese at that time. And so I remember struggling with that and feeling like I was really replaceable, because I was just an English speaker, and Sister Lam was the Chinese speaker, and she was the one that was doing everything. But as the time went on, it didn't matter anymore, because I was able to make a connection with people, and I really grew to love them, even without being able to necessarily speak their language and discuss more in depth things, because with English it was kind of just surface sometimes. But it was the greatest thing. And if you talk to anyone in the England Leeds Mission, Chinese areas are the best, and it's the ones that people are most excited to go to. And I got to start off in one, so it was amazing. Our mission, the number of missionaries increased, just like any of them around the world with the age change, and there was a big surplus. So I think there were about 250 missionaries total when I first came in, and there were about 60 sisters, which decreased a little bit because the age change made it rise for a little bit, but then it kind of fell back between 45 and 50 sisters, and I ended up being a sister train leader for about a year of my mission, and so I got to work really closely with the sisters, and that was a really great opportunity, and they the great thing with getting more sisters is a lot of areas opened that hadn't had sisters for years. Like in Hull, before we had come, there hadn't been sisters there for like 30 years, and the same in Leeds, and the same in Darlington, and actually the same in all the areas I served in. They hadn't had sisters for a long time, so that was cool to be able to open up those areas because of the increase of sisters. As far as the boundaries go, the England Leeds Mission is just parallel to the Manchester Mission. So we're in the northeast, whereas Manchester is northwest, and it goes all the way up to the border of Scotland and down to the most south I ever went was Hull, but it goes a little bit further south than that, just south of the Humber River. And like most people, I don't think I had ever heard of Leeds before I got this call. I mean, it's not that exotic of a location, but the only city within my mission that I had really heard of was York. And there's other major cities like Sheffield, Harrogate, Huddersfield, Leeds, obviously, and then up north is some of the other areas. And the up north actually is a really famous castle, which Harry Potter was shot there, and so that's in our mission. Unfortunately I was never able to get up there, but that's where the movie was shot, so that's kind of fun. And then there's a lot of big estate houses around. There's a lot to see in the mission on P days, and it's fun to get out and see the countryside and some of the culture. For the most part, it's predominantly English, but we did have Mandarin Chinese speakers, Polish speakers, and Slovak speakers. And in Sheffield, there's a huge Slovak branch. And for whatever reason, these people have just flocked to the church, and so they have quite a few of those speakers. But it's funny because a lot of these missionaries that get called to speak these languages get put with English companions. Not always, but and so sometimes if you get called to this mission, you might be in one of those areas. You might be trying to pick up the language a little bit. I know a sister that went home before I did that basically learned Slovak without being called, and there's cases of that with Chinese speakers as well. So there's a lot more going on there with the languages than just English, for sure. England is a very diverse place, especially if you get called to some of the London missions. I'm sure there's even more languages, but those are the ones in England Leeds. I got really lucky with my housing. I mostly just lived in flats that were, they call them flats rather than apartments. But I mostly was living just in two-man flats. But there are a few four-man flats in England, and those are the most fun, depending on, I guess, who's in the house with you. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to America. In terms of living, there's little differences. Like something funny is that they a lot of times I only had a dryer once in my whole mission, and it was like a combined washer dryer. And so it's really horrible. It doesn't dry your clothes. It's like very moist. So I didn't even ever use it. So most of the time I was there, I didn't use a dryer, and you just kind of get used to it. But they also have, when I first went, I hated it. I was like, I need a dryer. But they also have, rather than, you know, how in America you have like heating vents from the floor usually, in England they still tend to have radiators in almost every house. So there'll just be a little radiator in each room or so. And funny enough, you end up using the radiators a lot to dry your clothes. So you'll just hang your clothes on the radiator, and it's nice I remember in one of the flats I was in, it was nice to have the radiator because it was in our study room. And so whenever we went in to study in the morning in the winter when it was like freezing, we would both just sit against the radiator. And so it was kind of cozy. But that's a difference. The toilets are a little bit different as well. I don't know if you want to know about that, but for some reason they tend to have a lot less water, and I don't know, they're just different. Like when I got back, it's like, okay, that's an American toilet. So that was kind of funny. Other than that, though, they're mostly the same. Oh, except the windows are different too. They never have screens, and England doesn't have that many bugs, so it doesn't really matter. But we would get flies sometimes, and they always have this same latch thing, and you open them out, and you know, it's never like pull up like here. So those are some little differences with the flats. Transportation, for me, it was mostly buses and walking. And a lot of the areas you go, they will have double-decker buses. I remember the very first day or so I was in the mission, we got on the bus, and my trainer was like, okay, let's go to the top. Like, that's the best seat on the bus. And I didn't know anything, so I just followed her. And it can be kind of tricky walking up the stairs of the double-deckers because usually the driver starts moving before you're completely at the top. So you have to be careful, and especially coming down. I remember one sister telling me that it was a P day and they had gone shopping, and she had milk and she slipped and dropped the milk and it went everywhere. So you have to be careful. And another sister, I think pretty soon out in her mission, fell on the stairs and just wrecked her ankle, had to go home. So be careful on the stairs of the double-deckers. But it is true that the best seats are the top because you can see everything, and it's fun. And so yes, we did buses and we walked a lot. You do use the train occasionally, but mostly just to get to meetings or places that are farther away. Depending on the area you're in, if it's a really small hamlet or something, you'll use the train to go to outlying areas. And then the last 6 months of my mission, I ended up having a car. And your American license lasts for a year in the country, and then you have to get a license in their country. And the test to get a license over there is really kind of tricky. You have to be right on or they fail you. It's like the American license test is so much easier compared to them. So it's kind of annoying as a sister missionary because you have a year and then you only have 6 months. But it was a fun experience to get my license there. I had to get some hours in, and I got to know the do's and don'ts of roundabouts. I remember roundabouts were terrifying the first few times because there's so many exits, and you have to learn the etiquette of which blinker goes on when, and or you just I almost got in an accident a few times in roundabouts. But luckily I had a companion that was from Australia for a while, and so when we would drive, she could tell me, because they drive on the other side there as well. And so that took me I failed my first time on the practical driving test, and so I had to take it twice. Then I passed, and it was fun driving there. I got to drive on the other side, and I had to adjust it back a bit when I got back, but it was good. So yeah, it's mostly buses, trains, and occasionally cars, but not that many missionaries have cars there. So, and you get to. It's better to use public transportation anyway, because you can talk to more people, and you come across a lot more people than driving. So as far as work goes, it's kind of similar to here. It's not very different. People are doctors, lawyers, farmers, just kind of the spectrum. And with shopping, like grocery shopping, there's a few main, like, well-known shops, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda. Asda is a good one to know because it's actually owned by Walmart, and so if you want, they do have some American things there, and Asda's pretty cheap, so we would go there a lot on P days. As far as what's in the shops, it's pretty much the same too. I mean, these are just little differences, but they do have a lot of Cadbury chocolate, if you're a fan of that, and everything else you can kind of get the same. I mean, it's just meat and produce and stuff like that. So they live pretty closely to how we do. Okay, so I actually brought some money to show, and this is £10. So this is one of the smaller bills. The smallest bill you can get is £5. And as you can see, it has a picture of the Queen on it. And so it's a bit different than than American money. American money, I think, compared to other country currency, is a bit boring. Other money's usually kind of more colorful, but this would be about $15, give or take, over here, and this is the back of it. And it's funny because American money still looks a little bit strange to me. I mean, I just got so used to it, and they have. I remember that I felt like I was kind of in. When I could sort through my change person and pick out the right coins, because they are different. They use pence, so there's like 1p, 2p, 10p, 20p, and then there's a £1 and a £2 coin. So yeah, so the money was fun. That's just a little shot of it. When I initially went over, I didn't think that the culture would be that different, and it's not drastically different, but it is. You do have to adjust to it. The British people very much do have their own way, and it's different than Americans. I think the biggest thing. Let's see. I served for the majority of my mission in Yorkshire County, and each county that you go to has little different cultures and accents and things like that. And so I think in general, on the whole island of Britain, they start to get friendlier the farther north you go. And I saw that a little bit. Maybe people in Britain would disagree, but mostly there is a cultural divide between northerners and southerners. And I didn't interact that much with southerners, but I did notice that it got friendlier the farther north you went. Something funny in the Yorkshire area, and kind of in the general England Leeds Mission, is they'll call you, they have kind of like pet names, like they'll call you Love or Pet or Flower, and there's a few other ones, like, and when you're walking down the street, and it took me a while to kind of pick this up. For the first little while, I kept going around saying, like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And they don't really say that. Like when you're in the street and you're greeting someone, it's, "Hi, are you alright?" Or, "You alright, love?" And so you kind of you start picking that up, and you just try to join in. And then we rode the bus a lot. And of course, they're double-decker buses, the ones you see in London. They have those in the north too, and that's a little bit different. And when you get off the bus, you always say "ta," which just means thank you. So "ta love," and so that's something that's colloquial as well. And so just little things like that were kind of fun. I remember when I got home from my mission, my family thought that I sounded British. I mean, of course, to the British people, I didn't. I still sounded very much American. But you, as your mission progresses, you pick up the different intonation that British people have. So, for example, when they ask a question, they'll say, "Are you going to church today?" Rather than "Are you going to church today?" And I don't know if you can hear it, but it's a little bit different. You go up and then down, and so it's just little things like that, I think, make you start to sound kind of British, as well as the terms. I think in general, English people are more reserved, but that's less so in the north. I think people will talk to you on the street and on the bus and things, and I think that probably is harder down in London and in the south. But sometimes people are a little more suspicious of strangers. Like, I remember my companion and I knocked on this. It was like a little circle street. It was kind of a weird area. But almost every house we knocked on, you try to be friendly and ask their name and try to get a foot in the door, I guess. And almost every person on this street was like, "Why do you want to know our name?" Or, like, just very suspicious. But in general, the people of the north are really friendly and they'll talk to you. This was probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my mission and maybe my life. This was when I was serving in Leeds, and I had just become companions. I had just gotten a new companion. This was our first week together, and so you always have that time where you're like not super comfortable with them yet, and you can't really read them that well, and you're just not quite in the flow yet. You're a bit disjointed. So it was Thanksgiving Day. And we had been down in the university area because that was our area. She was a Chinese speaker, so we were just trying to catch the Chinese students. And we were just being careful about time because we had to be, there was an American family in the ward, and they invited us over for Thanksgiving, and so they lived kind of quite far away, and there was only this one specific bus that went there, and so we were kind of worried about that. So we left enough time, and we got to the bus stop, and we got on the bus, and it was rather than being a double-decker where it's stacked, it was two buses combined together with kind of like a accordion thing in the middle. So they were joined. And the bus, it was like rush hour, so the bus was really packed. And we got on, showed them our passes, then went all the way to the back. We were sort of actually in the middle of where it's joins, just standing because there was no room. And I saw a seat in the back, but there was only one. And I was really tired, so I went back and I sat down. And so I could still see my companion. She was still just standing in the middle. And I had never been to the place that we were going for dinner, and so I was just kind of keeping an eye on her. I don't want to miss getting off the bus at the right stop. So she starts moving towards the front, and all of a sudden I'm on like high alert. I'm like, okay, is she getting off, or is she going up there to sit down, or like I just was keeping an eye on her, and she was quite short, so I lost sight of her in the crowd. And so I'm like panicking because you know how scary it is to like lose sight of your companion, and the thought of being separated. It's like just this funny missionary thing. But so I get up and I'm in the middle area again because there's two sets of doors. So there's one in the middle of the two buses and then one at the front by the driver. And so we had stopped, and I had lost sight of her, so I'm standing in the middle of the doors, and I'm looking out, and also trying to look in the bus to see if I can spot her. Like, did she get off? Is she walking? And so I'm just kind of paralyzed there in the middle of the doors. And at that point, the bus driver, like, the stop had been done, and he was gonna go. So so the doors start closing, and I'm still standing there, and the doors close on me. And there's these people that are standing in that middle area, and everybody in the back of the bus is just staring at me. And so they're just staring at me. And meanwhile, I seriously am stuck in the doors, just right in the middle. So I either have to get back on or get off. So I just end up sliding out and get on the pavement. And the bus starts taking away, and I go up towards the front of the bus, and as the bus drives away, I see my companion sitting down in one of the windows. So I knock on the door, and she looks over, and then kind of just does a double take, and the bus takes away. And so she ends up getting off at the next bus stop, and we meet up. But it was like the worst experience, like so stressful. It was our first week together, and I'm sure those people that saw it still laugh about it. My decision in deciding to go is a little bit different. Like I said, it was kind of a 2-year process, because I was gonna go when I was 21, and this was before the age changed. But my plans ended up changing, and so in between that process, was the famous October conference when the age was lowered. And I remember I had come from Arizona and come home to Salt Lake to watch conference with my family. And so I remember distinctly sitting in our family room and hearing the news, and I think I was really kind of just numb to it, because I still, at that point, it was still at the back of my mind, but I wasn't making any active plans to go on a mission at that point. So in a way, it didn't really affect me, because I was already older at that point. I think I was 22. But I knew that if I did go on a mission, it would affect me, because there would be a lot of younger missionaries out there, and so the environment would be different. And I remember feeling kind of frustrated, actually, because the Sunday after I got back, it was Fast Sunday, and so all these girls were getting up in my ward, and they were 18, 19, and saying that in that minute, in that split second when President Monson made that announcement, they felt so strongly that they should go on a mission. And I think I was just frustrated, because I didn't feel a very secure answer at that point. And I was like, man, I've been dealing with this for like 2 years, and then answers are just falling out of the sky for these people. And so I think it is a unique challenge to go on a mission when you're older. That's not to say it's good or bad, it's just different. And for me, I think it was the best thing I did. I think if I'd gone at 21 as opposed to 23, my mission would have been much different. And I always remember my mission president, he's from Manchester, President Pilkington. He would talk about how when he would see older missionaries coming in, he would kind of just breathe a sigh of relief, because we need the younger ones, we need the older ones, and the older ones bring a different maturity to the mission and to the people and to the work. And so if you are older and thinking about going on a mission, I wouldn't let that stop you necessarily. I mean, you have to make that decision, but it really, really enriched my life, and it was the right time for me, and it was a really good experience. Food doesn't get that crazy in England, but there are some different cultures, so you do eat a lot of curry and stuff like that, but probably liver was the weirdest. That's not that crazy, but I think probably the craziest comes from trying to catch buses. Like, you will see you'll see missionaries just booking it for buses all the time. And there's so many times where we just got to the bus stop, and I swear like the bus driver would look over and close the door and drive away. So there's a lot of that. I think a lot of the spiritual experiences come when you're teaching, and especially baptisms. It's always so hard to like describe how you feel at a baptism of someone that you've taught, but you really do. It almost is like this like parent-child relationship. Like you feel like you taught them these things, and they've grown a lot, and they're at this moment, and you really do stand in the place of the Savior on your mission. And so when you're at that moment, you're not excited for yourself. You're just excited for this person for taking that step, and you can kind of see this projection into their future of how their life will be different now. And so those were always really, really special times. Our president, President Pilkington, again, he's British, and he would talk a lot about World War I and World War II, because those really affected the British people because they were so close to everything. And something like a slogan that he would always use at zone conferences and stuff is keep marching north, and always move to higher ground, and just keep going. And I think that's something that I've taken away a lot. You just have to keep marching north, just keep going. I think remembering names really improved on my mission. I think there were a lot of those over my mission, just like there are for many missionaries. But something for me is I struggled with depression a lot of my mission, probably the majority of my mission. And so it was just trying to find a balance of how to deal with that and still function as a missionary. This one time, I was serving in Leeds. It was supposed to be, like the weather reports were saying it was just going to be crazy wind. And we got this voicemail, they call it answer phone in England, from the assistants. And they said, so there's going to be crazy weather, but don't stay inside, still go outside and talk to people, but just stay away from trees. So my companion and I were walking to the chapel because there was a Relief Society activity, and it ended up being a smoothie thing or something. So we brought our blender as well. I don't know why we decided to go, because the weather was insane. It was windy, but it was also raining, and it was cold, so it was like kind of frozen rain. And so we start walking, and I'm not even kidding, like it was sideways rain into our faces the whole time. And we finally made it to the chapel, and the activity had been canceled. So we walked back home. I think just be patient with yourself and give yourself enough time to adjust. I think with me, I tend to be really impatient and want things to get going. And so I think I tell myself to let things, progress and give it time, but in the same breath, freak out and think, why aren't things happening faster? So I think you just have to strike a balance and just enjoy the transition and let it come, and treasure your mission and the things that you experience there, but realize that there is so much ahead of you, and to just take this time to transition. For sisters especially, I remember kind of having a crisis before I went out on my mission, because it's hard to know exactly what to bring. With elders, it's a little bit more straightforward. You have your suits and your shoes, and that's kind of it. But with sisters, you have to have enough skirts and tops to go with those same skirts. It's very easy to get sick of your clothing. One tip I have is a lot of the sisters, there's a shop called Primark in England, and it's probably in the same quality as like Target, kind of in their clothing. So it's cheap, And it doesn't necessarily last you that long, but it's fun to go there on P-Day, and because they usually have pretty modest choices too. So a lot of us would go there on P-Days and get skirts and tops, and they have other fun things there. So so that's a good option to kind of like fill in the gaps in your wardrobe. And as a sister missionary, I think you get so sick of your clothing by the end of the mission. I don't know about elders, but something I did a lot is my companions and I would share clothes, just because their clothes are new to you, so it adds a little variety. With shoes, I would definitely invest in a good pair of boots. That's really important during the winter because it is rainy and sometimes there's snow. But you do want a good solid pair of boots. I had a pair of I think they were the brand Keen, Keen, and they were boots, and they were pretty cheap, and they lasted me my whole mission. So I would really recommend that. They have different colors. Another thing is you will get used to wearing tights a lot. Like, that's basically a staple. Sometimes even in the summer, just depending on how cold it is. Because if the sun's not out, it can get cold. But basically the whole winter you wear, and spring you wear tights with boots. A fun thing to have are some scarves to change it up. Just some fun patterns. The great thing about being a sister missionary now is that you can wear colorful stuff, and you want to still be professional and conservative, but I don't think there's a reason to not be yourself in your clothing, and that's still a way that you can express yourself, I guess, but just not too extreme, maybe. I think just in general, like loose, flowy skirts and dresses are the best, because you don't want to be uncomfortable. A lot of times you don't have the best seating arrangements when you go and teach investigators, so you don't want to be worrying about skirts that are coming up or something. I think that's pretty much it. With your hair, it is a little bit more humid, but I have quite curly hair. I straighten it, and the humidity wasn't too bad. Like, I could still straighten it; it would stay straight. And I got really lucky with it not being that rainy while I was there, especially in the summers. So it was great. I did end up taking an umbrella, but you kind of just don't end up using it because it does get really windy there too. So like, so many umbrellas broke. They just get turned inside out, and you kind of just, I would invest in like a sort of, I had a North Face windbreaker that was waterproof too. And so I would use that a lot when it wasn't super cold, but it would keep me dry. I just get one with a hood, and you can just use that instead of an umbrella. Sometimes it just doesn't, by the end of your mission, it's like not even worth it to pull out an umbrella. You just like put your hood on, and I think it's similar to people that live in Seattle where it rains a lot. You're just used to it, and you just go with the flow. So, yeah, I would get one really warm coat though for the winter though, because it does get quite cold. I think if I had known what I do now at the time of when I opened my call and that whole journey, I think I probably would just tell myself to take it all in stride. I mean, that's kind of cliche, but you have a lot of crazy expectations and things that you think will happen, and I would kind of just discard those. Not that you can't hope for great experiences and fun things to happen, but I would just take it as it comes. I think so often my mission president would say a lot that the adversary tries to get us to either live in the past or the future, to dwell on happy or sad things in the past, or to anticipate the future with anxiety and stuff like that. And so one of the hardest things I think as a human, let alone a missionary, is to be in the moment and to just live for today and in the present. But I think that's really important as a missionary, because it's so easy to get stressed out and to have a lot of anxiety and because you love what you're doing, you love the people that you're working with, and you care so much about them that you can start worrying about them and what's going to happen, and if a baptismal date drops or stuff like that can be stressful. But you kind of just have to let it roll off and just attain some sort of Zen state on your mission. And that's hard, but the way to do it is just to leave it in the Lord's hands and realize that you don't have much control. That's something that I had to come to terms with, and just kind of let the control go. Because sometimes I tend to be perfectionist, have perfectionist tendencies maybe, and want to control things. But on a mission, you just can't do it because you're dealing with people and they have struggles and they have their own life. And sometimes they'll fall or they'll give up, but sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll make it, but you have to just trust that whatever happens, these people are in the Lord's hands and they have their agency. And so I think just going into your mission, just have that in mind and don't stress yourself out too much. When you get to your end of your mission, I can guarantee that you'll want to stay and that you'll miss it and that you'll love the English people. So just take it in stride and enjoy it.
I still remember being on the plane coming over to the Manchester airport from Salt Lake. Well, it was Salt Lake to Atlanta to Manchester. And I still remember right when we started getting close to England, I could look out and I could see the green fields all below me, and just it looked so picturesque. It was kind of an exciting moment to see, that England was really there, and I was finally getting there, and that was great. I got there, found out one of my pieces of luggage was lost, but that was okay. It all worked out later anyways. And I got to Manchester, and then I actually got to stay in the Preston MTC for a night to kind of sync up with those missionaries that were going to go to the Leeds Mission as well. So that was cool. And seeing the Preston MTC, they have a nice MTC there. They have super good food. That was really cool. Really nice place there. And then the next day, our mission president came, and we all got in cars and got to drive to the mission. And I still remember being at the first transfer meeting. I was really kind of nervous, and I saw all these missionaries out in the pews that just looked so experienced and old, at least compared to me. I felt so new and everything. And a great experience I remember is actually I bore my testimony, and as all the other new missionaries did. And after the meeting, there was an older missionary who came up to me and said, "Hey, I really appreciate your testimony. It's a really powerful testimony." And that was such a comforting thing. Just, you're new and you're kind of a little bit frazzled because you just don't really know what's going on exactly, and everyone else does, but just that kindness. And I kind of felt like just from that moment, I guess, I felt like I already had a place in the mission and had already had some friends there. So that was really nice. And then I met my trainer, and we got our first area in Hull, and that first night, it was such a big day, and it was really cool driving there and seeing the countryside, and it was really good. It was good beginning experience in my mission. The Leeds Mission is what the English people would call the North. The Leeds Mission borders on Scotland at the top, and at the bottom it's just a little bit north of Nottingham. So it's actually, I think, the biggest geographically in England. It's a pretty big area, although a lot of it is like countryside, and there's some moors and kind of places to go out and hiking and walking around. But they have some decently big cities, at least for England. Big cities are like York. I think York was the only city that I'd heard of before my mission. I don't think I really even knew where Leeds was, or that it even existed, but it does, and it's great. So there's big cities like Sheffield, Newcastle, and yeah, that's, I guess, a little bit about generally what England's like up there. The weather, I served pretty close to the coast for a lot of my mission, on that east coast, and it can be pretty windy sometimes, actually. Actually, some days it'll be super, super windy, and actually a couple weeks ago was the only time that it's ever been as windy as England. there's some big wind or something in Provo, but it can get really windy. It can be rainy, but really it wasn't as rainy as I thought it would be. It's always the stereotype that England is so rainy, and it rained sometimes, but it wasn't every single day. There were some days where it didn't rain. And something that's kind of funny is there was this kind of rain that the missionaries called the mist of death, because even if you had an umbrella, there's no way that you're going to avoid it. It's like kind of like a mister machine that you might have used, where it makes mist. I had those when I was playing soccer when I was a little kid, when you're tired and you just spray mist on your face, and it's kind of nice. It kind of feels like that, where it's just these really small pieces of rain and they're kind of coming at you horizontally. So there's pretty much nothing that you can do to avoid it, but it's not that bad. You kind of get used to it, and it was pretty good. In terms of the food, there are some unique foods actually in the north. They actually, in this one zone, funnily enough, in the Billingham zone, they have this food called a parmo, which is like a big piece of chicken that's covered in breading. Is that what it's called? It's breaded chicken, and then it's fried, and then you put the special sauce on it and cheese, and then you have little sauces that you dip it in and stuff. So it's basically just a big piece of fried chicken, but it has like its own special taste to it, and it's super good. I think at least all the elders liked it. I think some of the sisters weren't. They're probably more healthier than the elders, but we liked it a lot. I ate a lot of parmos, and I definitely miss a good parmo. Something unique as well to our mission is some of the accents. I mean, we have the Yorkshire accent, which I can't really do a good imitation of the Yorkshire accent. But there's kind of different, variants of it. I mean, Sheffield has its own Yorkshire accent, and Leeds and Hull. And as well, there's even some other accents like the Teessider accent by Billingham and Middlesbrough. I served in Middlesbrough, so that was really cool. And then there's also the Geordie accent, there's a city next to it called Sunderland, and they're called the Mackhams, and they have a pretty similar accent. They don't think so because they're kind of rivals with the Geordies, and it's kind of a funny long story. But anyways, the Geordies have a really interesting accent. I had never heard anything like it before I came to the mission. It's so interesting. Like they say "aye aye" just like a pirate. And they have this really cool accent when they talk. And I even remember one experience actually where I was at this restaurant called Nando's. It's kind of like a Portuguese chicken kind of place. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but Nando's is great. And the person that was at the counter, she had the strongest accent. And I was trying to order stuff, and she was asking me like what part of the chicken that I wanted, if I wanted a chicken breast or a chicken thigh or something like that. But I honestly could not understand her. It was such a thick accent, and that was one of the only times that I really could not understand an English person because of their accent. And so it was pretty funny. At least in retrospect, she was kind of frustrated in the moment, but I had to ask her 3 times or so to say, well, sorry, what did you say again? And so and it was just like a simple question, like I said, of which part of the chicken do you want? But I could not understand her. But yeah, it was great. I love the North. Sometimes it gets a bad rap from people in the South because the South is so refined and so cultured, but the North is great. I love it. I love the people there. They have some beautiful countryside in between the cities. I mean, they have some big cities that kind of have that urban feel to it, but they have there's a lot of countryside surrounding it. And especially for missionaries that serve in the villages up there, there's a lot of smaller towns or villages that sometimes people will get to, and it's just beautiful. They have such nice countryside. It's so green, the rolling hills. It's a unique sight, and especially I love it in the spring when it's just rained and everything is so green. It's just, I don't know how to describe it other than that it's really green and it's just really beautiful. So I really miss that about England for sure. Yeah, we definitely had a unique kind of role being Chinese-speaking missionaries because, number one, I mean, we always lived in the cities, in the bigger cities in the mission, mainly because a lot of the investigators that we taught, a lot of the Chinese people that we met were were students that were foreign exchange students. There were some people that were, immigrants that came to England to live there permanently to work, but they were definitely, in terms of the Chinese people, they were definitely the minority compared to the students in the cities. I mean, I remember in Sheffield I heard we had like 3,000 Chinese people there. I don't know if that's even correct or not, but it definitely seemed like it because there were a lot of Chinese students there, a lot more than BYU. There's not really that many Chinese students here, but in England there's a lot that come as foreign exchange students to mainly study. A lot of them studied master's degrees, but there were people that came and studied undergraduate as well. So we ended up a lot talking to people on the street a lot of the time in the cities, walking around in areas where there were a lot of students and meeting people and inviting them to learn more. We'd oftentimes offer to help people with English, maybe correcting their papers, because a lot of them struggled with English, just obviously because it's their second language, and especially when you're writing at a university level, it's not super easy even for me, who's I've grown up speaking English my whole life and I have to work hard at it. So I can imagine that it's not easy for other people. But yeah, a lot of the times whenever we were looking for people to teach, we'd do we called it street contacting, and met a ton of people doing that, as well as just talking to people that we had met and saying, hey, what other friends do you have that might be interested to come to church and things. So that was really cool for sure. I think one of my worries before I came to my mission was thinking, am I able to learn Chinese if I'm not in a place where a lot of people speak Chinese? And I was really happy to find out, especially I think with truly with the gifts of the Spirit, with the gift of tongues, you can learn the language. And I mean, I'm still studying it, I'm still learning it, but I was able to learn it at such a faster rate than I thought that was possible. I definitely recognized that there was power beyond my own that was helping me to learn it. And so that was really a really special experience for me. So if anyone is wondering that, I think they should definitely know that even if you're called to Australia or wherever else, that you can definitely learn even Chinese, as crazy of a different language that is, you can learn it in another country. And the Lord really knows what he's doing when he calls people to other countries learning different languages. So that was really cool to see. So we met a lot of Chinese people. There's a lot of success, a lot of great Chinese people that we met. It's exciting to be a part of that work and to see, even though China's not open, to see them getting to go back to China and participate there. I tried a lot of interesting Chinese foods, probably a lot more adventurous than the English foods that I had. English food is, although it's something unique and different to American food, Chinese food is definitely a lot more different than English food to American food. And the weirdest thing that I probably had was duck tongue. It wasn't even bought in England. There was this person that we knew, a friend, and she had her mom send her some barbecued duck tongue in like this Ziploc bag. And I remember her pulling out and thinking, what is that? And she offered it to us and told us what it was. And I only did it because my companion would do it. And we ended up eating it on the count of 3, and it was really weird. I don't necessarily recommend it, but it's fun to try. And I tried some other interesting things. I tried chicken gizzard. That was really spicy. I tried a lot of stomach. The first time I ate stomach was really weird, and then I kind of got used to it. I didn't have it all the time when I ate Chinese food, but a fair number of times. In general, though, there was one thing that all the missionaries in our mission really wanted to try if they ever got to go on an exchange with us or something, is eating something called hot pot, or 火锅 in Chinese. It's basically where you have this boiling pot of water in the middle of the table, and you just put in a whole bunch of different stuff into it to cook it: vegetables, tofu, seafood, slices of lamb or beef or chicken, and it's really, really good. I love it. There's different sauces that you can kind of cook things in as well. So sometimes you can eat really spicy hot pot, or sometimes not really spicy if you're not a fan of spicy food. as well as in your bowls when you take stuff out of the hot pot with your chopsticks, which is kind of a good chopsticks practice, by the way. Trying to fish out things with the chopsticks. And there's different sauces that you can try as well. You know, I love one that was like a peanut butter, or sometimes what's it called? Soy butter, like soy. Is it called soy seed? That's a soy seed, right? Or
Soy sauce?
No. What's that thing called? It's a nut, but it's not peanut butter. It's soy milk. Yeah, it's a soy nut, right? Yeah. So they have like a soy sauce. It's like a soy sauce, but it's not like it's like soy butter. It's kind of like peanut butter, but it's made out of soy nuts instead of peanut butter. So that was kind of cool. But anyways, there's different sauces you can try with hot pot, and it was pretty good. When I was in the MTC, there were missionaries that went to Australia speaking Chinese, and New Zealand, Canada, the U.S., France, Switzerland, and Singapore, and just all over the place. So I didn't even realize that there were so many Chinese missionaries spread around. But it's kind of like a unique thing that's happening, just because since China's not open, there's still a lot of Chinese people that get baptized outside of China, get to go back and worship in the branches there. So one thing that I forgot to mention is that, so as a Chinese-speaking missionary in the England Leeds Mission, basically, so it's not, being a Chinese speaker in England, it's not like its own little mission. I was in the Leeds Mission with a lot of other English missionaries, English-speaking missionaries, and we actually had a couple Polish missionaries as well. But we had about, when I was there at the beginning, we had about 140 missionaries, and then with the age change and the surge of missionaries, we increased by about, I know the cap was increased to 100, and I know there was probably at least 200 missionaries by the time that I left. So that was really exciting to be there at that time. But there was about, out of the 140 originally, there were about 10 Chinese-speaking missionaries. And so then we were kind of spread around the big cities there, where there were a lot of Chinese people. And I actually never served with a native companion from mainland China or from Taiwan. There were some Taiwanese missionaries, though, in our mission. And there was actually an elder that was from Guangdong in mainland China, which was pretty cool. And but I never served with a native speaker, which was fine. And I served a lot of the times. I did serve with a couple other Chinese-speaking missionaries that were American, and I think they were all American, yeah. And another cool thing was, but that we actually, most of the time, I served with English-speaking missionaries. So we had one Chinese speaker and one English speaker as a companionship, and it actually worked out well. I mean, I know sometimes the English-speaking companion, if we spoke a lot in Chinese in a lesson, he might not have gotten to speak as much, but we still definitely made it so that they can share their testimony and share things in that way. So that was kind of interesting. I didn't expect that or think about that before, but yeah, sometimes you're paired up with English-speaking missionaries and just whatever the mission needs, I guess. They could switch back to having Chinese companions with Chinese companions, but that was kind of a cool thing, for sure. Since the Chinese people, most of them that we met were foreign exchange students from mainland China, we really had a lot of different accents that we encountered, a lot of different, I mean, they were all Mandarin, but people from different areas of China have different accents, and especially sometimes if their local dialect in China is really different than Mandarin, then they had a really strong accent. Or sometimes they use some words that we were unfamiliar with, but it's all good. You know, you just ask them what that word means and everything. But yeah, I think different than a lot of missionaries that go to Taiwan, and there's definitely a big difference between the Taiwanese accent and even words that they use between what people with like standard Putonghua in Beijing, what they speak. There's just a bit of a difference there, I guess. Trying to think of, I don't know how to explain it. Like the people in Beijing have a harder R when they speak, and Taiwanese people don't really use the R very much. There's a lot of words in Mandarin that end with R, or sometimes people in Beijing add the R sound to random words just because it's their accent and they like that sound. So it sounds kind of funny to people in Taiwan. At least it's just pretty different. So I'd say missionaries that go and learn Chinese outside of Taiwan or Hong Kong will most likely meet a lot of people with more Beijing kind of Chinese and not have as much of a Taiwanese accent like some of the elders and sisters that come back from Taiwan. So it's a little bit different, but you can still easily communicate with someone from Taiwan. I personally felt like it was a little bit harder to understand people from Taiwan, and still even now, just because I'm more used to people with a northern accent. Yeah, I guess it's what I'm used to. But yeah. So, and as well, one kind of funny thing as well is when Chinese people came to England and learned English really well, it was kind of interesting to hear a person speak with a British English accent and then speak Chinese as well. That was an interesting combination. That was really fun. But other than that, I mean, yeah, it was really a cool experience, I think, in a way, to get kind of an overall idea of what Chinese accents are like. Just meeting people from so many different places. I mean, people from, Dongbei that have a really, really strong accent sometimes. And sometimes just having such a spectrum of different accents. It was really interesting to learn about. I mean, using that R sound that people in the north especially make, like if they said, if somebody from China said, "I'm Chinese," they'd say, 我是中国人. But somebody from Taiwan might say, 我是台湾人. And so it's a little bit less pronounced of an R sound. Or really, sometimes it's almost gone completely. And so at first when you're learning Chinese, you kind of get used to one accent and then you hear the other and you're just totally lost. You're thinking, what are they saying? And then once you have more experience with Chinese, you can kind of bridge between the two and understand different people. But it's easier over time. At first, they are very different. So I especially remember at the MTC, actually, they have kind of some pre-recorded conversations and things of different Chinese people that you listen to. And the guy from the north, I never really heard the northern accent when I was in the MTC. And when that guy spoke, I didn't know anything that he said. So that was pretty funny. Yeah, there's some differences. They use different words. Like they have different words for bicycle, different words for taxi and stuff like that. Kind of in a funny parallel, me being in England, they have different words for, cookie. They say biscuit. Instead of saying chips, they say crisps. Instead of they have a lot of different words for things. There's so many, I can't even remember them all, but it's pretty funny. They even for cars, I mean, they say, instead of the trunk and for the hood, they say oh man, now I can't even remember it. They say bonnet for the hood, and they say the boot for the trunk. That's what it is. And so it's funny kind of having that experience and learning all these different kind of exchangeable words for different things. But Chinese has its own thing, just like English does, of different areas use different words for the same idea. Yeah, it's a lot of fun though. Just because that's the people that I serve with, I definitely love that accent, and it kind of just feels a little bit like home sometimes when I hear people that have that really strong accent. So I still like to keep in touch with my friends in China and from China that I've met, and it's fun always hearing their accents and stuff. Another kind of funny thing actually about being a Chinese-speaking missionary is, especially in a non-Chinese-speaking country, is that Chinese people oftentimes select their own English names when they come to other countries, and they pick some very interesting ones. I mean, I met someone named Cookie and someone named One Dream and Cage, and I heard of somebody named Megatron. So that was pretty funny. But they're great, and it's cool hearing different names that they pick. Kind of a fun thing. But there's actually a really big one. It was in the church news a while ago. There was a lot of Slovakian people that joined the church in Sheffield, and I think there was even I can't remember. There was a lot of Slovakian people that basically joined the church in Sheffield. It was really exciting. And I was a missionary that I was never really too involved with that. I kind of really saw it more from the outside and heard kind of the miracle stories about it. That was really cool. But basically in Sheffield, there were just, they ended up after a period of a few months creating a branch there. There's now a Slovakian branch president, Pharaoh. He's a great guy. Kind of a cool experience for me, being kind of hearing about it and then getting to just kind of get a glimpse of what that was like. There was one time I was serving in Sheffield, but with the Chinese people, kind of in a different part of the city. There's one time I got to go on an exchange with one of the elders there who was from the Czech Republic. And Czech and Slovakian are close enough languages that he could speak Czech and Slovakian just fine. And he was serving there, and I got to go serve with him for a couple days, and that was a really cool experience. The Slovakian people are great. It was exciting to just see the spiritual strength that they had. I got to go visit Pharaoh's house, the branch president. He's such a strong member, such a great guy. And I got to as well go just visit a lot of other members, and we got to go meet a new family that they had found, and they were so excited about the gospel. And I mean, the truth is that experience, it wasn't without its setbacks. They had some really strong opposition from another local church that didn't really like our church for some reason. I don't really know the full story of it. But it was also a really inspiring story of just how, even with different setbacks or different misunderstandings, how people can work forward and be positive, and how over time they were able to, stay in touch with friends and help people to gain faith in Jesus Christ and to gain strength as well within the church. So it was a great experience. It was cool seeing the Slovakian members, hearing about just the wonderful response there. And as well, for me, I got to try some cool Slovakian foods as well, as a side note. And so it was just really cool seeing getting that vision of how the Lord really works with so many different kinds of people. And whether they're Slovakian or Chinese or English or whatever, he has his eye on all of them, and he has his plan, and amazing things can happen. So that was cool. I was surprised about how it's really true. I mean, I already, believed it coming out as a missionary, that the Lord will guide you to find people. But it's so cool when that really does happen, and how he's so concerned and aware of what's going on, even in, one random city in England that I had never heard of before. I still remember kind of a funny and spiritual kind of experience that I had as I was knocking on some doors late one night before we went in. And we got to this door of this student, and he was Greek. And we were talking to him, but he wasn't really that interested. And we were kind of trying to encourage him to learn more and types of things and answer his questions, but he just wasn't really interested. And as we were talking to him, this Chinese guy walked by us. It's kind of dark, so we could only barely see him right when he got to us. And he looked at us and he smiled, and he just seemed like the super nice guy. And I had this feeling like we should just go talk to him. And so it's kind of funny, but we actually just kind of left the guy at the door that wasn't really interested and said, "All right, we'll see you later." And then we just went and walked with this Chinese guy just as he was kind of walking home, and got to meet him. And he's a really great guy. Became a really great friend. He got baptized, joined the church. And it's just funny how the Lord kind of put that person in our path, where sometimes you're in a situation, you're kind of wondering, how is the Lord going to help me find someone? And oftentimes in really unexpected ways, he just will bring people into your life, bring people into contact with you that are ready to receive the gospel and are just great people looking for the truth. And that's what happened that night. We met our good friend, and that was a really kind of a funny, interesting experience of just leaving the guy at the door, and and we went and got to get in contact with this friend, and then later we went and taught him, I think the next day or the next week or something like that. There's a lot of funny experiences that just happen unexpectedly, and I think those are the best ones in a way. I remember one time we were at there were a lot of funny experiences that actually happened at this one Ukrainian guy's house. And it's kind of a side note, in England, I was surprised, there's such a variety of people. I met people from hundreds, probably more than 100 countries. Maybe that's an exaggeration. At least 50. A lot of different countries, and speaking a lot of different languages. But anyways, we taught this guy from Ukraine named Vladimir. And there was just so many funny things that happened at his house. He had this little black cat named Mr. Williams. And I don't know how I got that name, but we always thought that was funny. Anyways, Mr. Williams, I remember right when he bought the cat, he was all excited about it, and And then like the next week we came back, he's like, Mr. Williams, very problem cat. And he talked about how it would jump on him in the middle of the night, and just this, it turned into to be this crazy cat. And it's just funny how you get to know people and their lives and the things that are going on in their lives, and just all these funny little stories that happen. Another funny experience at Vladimir's house is kind of connected with it. One day we had so much food because we had a late lunch. These people invited us to go to a Chinese buffet with them, and we knew we shouldn't eat that much because we already had a lot of food to eat at our tea appointment, which is what they call dinner in England, is eating tea. And we had this tea appointment. We knew we were going to get a lot of food, but we ate too much at the Chinese buffet anyways. And then we had a lesson with Vladimir right before we went to this tea appointment. And Vladimir had decided that day to make us some food. And we already knew that from other experiences that he'd be offended if we didn't try what he gave us. So he had this nice, but it was actually really good. It was this piece of chicken with rice kind of thing that he made, and it was great. But we were already kind of full. But we ate it anyways because we wanted to be respectful and stuff. And then we ran. We were kind of running late as well, so we had to run on a full stomach halfway across the city to this sister in the ward that was from Zimbabwe. And we got there for the tea appointment, and she had made us the biggest plate of food that I've ever seen. So it was just a funny day where we got so much food, and I don't know how we ate it. I didn't actually finish all of the food at the tea appointment because my stomach was 1.5 times full, probably. But that was just kind of a funny experience. One kind of, I think, spiritually uplifting story that makes a big difference to me, and I think helps me understand an important gospel principle, kind of began when I was a younger missionary. I'd been called to be a district leader for this one area, and anyways, there was a missionary who he's a really good guy, but he, I think, was kind of maybe struggling at that point, and saw that I was really trying to work hard and do everything in the best way, and he pulled me aside one time and just said, Elder Patterson, if you keep going at this pace, you're just going to wear out, and you're not going to be able to do it. You're just working too hard. And I was kind of wondering about that and thinking, what is he meaning? Like, is what he's saying really true? Like, am I just going to burn out at some point in my mission? And I came to really understand and gain a testimony that God really gives us grace as missionaries and as members of the church when we ask for it and when we really desire it. As a missionary, I really wanted to help the people that we taught, and I wanted to be able to do the things that I could. I realized that the time was limited, and it was a really powerful experience to me to realize, I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my whole life at something, and just especially in the sense that it was so constant. I'd worked hard in school, you know what I mean? But you have breaks from school, and you get to come home and watch TV or hang out with your friends. And as a missionary, it's really like a 24-hour kind of thing for 2 years. And I was surprised and really excited to see that the Lord gave me energy and power to just do the things that I needed to do and to not wear out. When I got home and my head hit the pillow, I was out. You're just tired and you're gone. But I'm surprised during the day. We walked a lot of places. I never actually had a car at any point in my mission. So I did a lot of walking and a lot of riding the bus. And I was surprised at just how, walking for hours and, miles every day, I didn't tire out. And I'm not really a super athletic person, as people that know me can testify. I'm not, I like doing things outside, but I'm not, super athletic or anything. And the Lord gave me strength to do what I needed to do. And that was a really cool experience. So it really just taught me a big lesson that I can take back now, and that it reminds me of just what the Lord has in store for people that are that have big things to do. So that was really cool. Well, great. Well, you have a great experience waiting for you if you're a missionary that's just about to go to the England Leeds Mission or to any mission. But some advice that I'd give, something that really changed my life, especially at the beginning of my mission, is really applying the counsel that you'll hear, and you might have heard already, to forget yourself and go to work. That's a powerful thing, and I can testify that that's true. I remember when I was at the beginning of my mission, I was kind of, especially when I got to England, it really set in. You're far away from home. It's a new place. It's just a new experience. And I felt kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It was just a really difficult experience for me at first, just trying to adjust to everything. And as I went out and I was feeling worried about myself and all these things, I was struggling a little bit. But then I started to try to apply this principle. I don't remember how I learned it, whether I had read it or if it was something that the Spirit had reminded me about. But I started to forget myself and to think about the people that I was teaching and just forgetting about all the concerns that I had. And I went out, and I can't tell you how wonderful that change was when my life just filled with joy. I felt such a happiness that I've never felt before in my life. And I can promise you that that's waiting for you in your mission if you really apply that counsel to forget yourself and go to work. I am excited for you because I know that you're just about to have a really great spiritual experience if you let it. That the Lord has wonderful things that He can teach you through experiences, through direct teaching, through the Spirit. I had some wonderful experiences at meetings as a missionary that just having flood of inspiration where the Lord teaches you things that you need to know, things for your stewardship. And it's an exciting and wonderful time. And I'm a little bit jealous for sure that you get to go do that. And I know that the Lord will help you to do the things that you need to do. He'll give you power and grace. He'll help you to actually teach by the Spirit and to teach what He would have you say. That's a powerful thing in itself.